didn't find their way to America in the trunk of a ship. We've all heard the terms Negro, Black, Colored, African American. But what do these terms really mean? What are they really saying? And what do the people who these names are attached to, who are they really? I mean, that's something that's going to be have to talk about. We're going to have to rectify. Should have been done 50 years ago. So tonight, Ms. Lisa Cypress of the Accomax of Virginia is going to explain to us in old books, old records, what these terms mean and what did they mean to the people back then? What were the Negro called back then? Who were they? What was their lot? Is it the same as today? So, without any further ado, I bring to you Miss Lisa Cypress and check out what she says, y'all. Listen to these terms and see how we always get twisted up. Lisa, how you feeling tonight?
Hello. I'm great. I'm great. I'm feeling good. Glad to have to be back with you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, this was a something I had to do, put a little time and thought into. Got a little stressed out about it because it's something that a lot of people are so quickly um getting wise to the truth that they're just, you know what I mean? They're just moving. They're moving so fast. Like it's like they're learning and they're already putting out content. Like they're already talking. So it's like, but and what I'm seeing is that because they're moving so fast that they're missing some of the understanding. And so I just wanted to kind of clear it. And it's like it is confusing. Like it's not that it's not confusing, it is. But so I just wanted to kind of let's work with the terms and the historical changes that occurred to us as a people. Like, let's just kind of get a better get more comfortable with it. You know what I'm saying? That's all. Get more comfortable. So let me try to get some information out here for you guys. Use the entire screen. I think I'm not sharing it. Share the entire screen. I'm gonna keep it like that until I get it together. That's what we'll do. Mm, okay. All right. So, can you see what I have up there now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, I think I see like a lot of people are like, what I noticed was people are putting up pictures and they're saying things like, yeah, my grandmother, she had that, Indian high cheekbones, or my great grandma. And I'm like, okay, so, we got to kind of roll it back so the people that are getting wise can kind of catch up to this because they're still kind of thinking that, okay, I got some Indian in me. They're not understanding or understanding that you are the Indian and how that actually happened. And how it actually happened is probably the most interesting thing. But what I want everybody to do is, yeah, it's good to go look at all the little, try to find the old Indian pictures and books and all that kind of stuff. But you're not gonna really see what you need to see necessarily in those books. But you do. You don't know. People do stuff like they find pictures that looks like my daddy or that looks like my granddaddy. I mean, everybody's not gonna find that match. But what you need to do is look in the doggone mirror. Now, what is an American Indian? We need to be very clear about what is an American Indian. Can they see the slides or no? Can you put it so what slides are showing?
It's up.
Okay, cool. I see it now. An American Indian. What is an American Indian? An American Indian is the dark skinned, big lip, prominent nose, bushy haired people who come from the land, the soil, the water, and the nature of America. Just look in the mirror, just look at your people. Whatever that is, especially if you already identify. Now, this is the thing. I'm going to show you how you can walk it back, and I'm going to show you why you're going to know who you are and that then what the Negro is and versus the Indian, so you can actually understand what transpired. This is my mom, by the way. That's my mom. That's me and my sister, Penny, or Copper Coin. Now, Copper Coin looked like an Asian baby when she was born. She kind of looks like an old Asian woman now, actually. She was paler when she was born and seems like she's getting paler as she gets older. I guess that. Anyway, but the lawsuit that I have that I'm suing for my ancestral land is through my big mama and my big daddy, my mom's parents. It's not through the lighter complected people that, oh, we Cherokee or we this, and they actually, not to throw shade that lighter skinned people don't have or not Indian, because we were various shades of brown. No, my dad descends from Judith Cyprus, who is listed in records as being Indian. So it's not that, no, it's not that they're not Indian. But like I'm saying, the actual records of the reservation and all the land patents and everything that I'm suing from are for both from my big daddy side and my big mama side, pictured here next to me. Those are the people that have all the land patents, the land grants. It's those two. Thank you, big mama and big daddy. It's those are the people that have all the documented, connected to the land back to the 1600s. It's these people that are in the records. Okay. Not that the Cypresses are in the records or the Smiths, because actually there's a chief that actually is of the Cypress line. So I'm not trying to say that I'm just letting you know that you can't go. We got to let go our colorism. Okay. Colorism is what did us in. We can't go forward as Indians with the colorism. There's not a color that you're going to be finding that's going to be an Indian color. The reddish tone, yeah. Dark, yeah. It's various shades of brown. Copper color, copper gets dark, blacky dark almost. Darky dark, and then it gets like shiny, golden, clear, yellowish. This is my dad in the coming up pictures. My dad in the military. That's my big daddy again. But then also that's one of my married into the family members that he has a very long lineage. On everybody does on the Eastern Shore. We're all have very long like records and stuff and land and stuff. But I'm just want to let you know that whether you're dark or light or in between, that this Indian thing is inside of us and it doesn't have a look. So let's look the lookership. We need to let go of the lookership. And a lot of times you'll find that a lot of your family members are hesitant to be like, oh, I'm indigenous or I'm an Indian, because they don't have that look that people think, oh, well, you got to be light or you got to. No, these are my ancestors. These are my grandparents that have all the lineage and all the land grants and land patents. Okay. But like I said, there are other things that come with the other side of the family. They're off reservation Indians. So anyway, let's keep it moving. Now you can go look through books, and the older you look through them, you're gonna find all kinds of dark Indians with curly hair, short froze, long. See, even in this picture, you got people with long hair towards the front. You got some afros in there. You got all kinds of looks. Okay, so I mean, and then people act like they disturbed. There's some people ain't the people that the Indians. Look at that big building in the back. Okay, this is America. Look at that big structure in the back. It's not a long house. Okay, so I mean, don't be upset because you see us not wearing friggin' a uniform. Why do we have to wear a uniform? It's warm in America. Okay, so if it's summertime and it's warm, you're not gonna be wearing a whole uniform if it's summertime and you're warm. Some of these daggone people out there in the YouTube world act like you got to be wearing a whole suit, and in order for you to look like you are a civilized people. This is a whole suit. Whatever it's, if it's hot, you're not gonna wear as much as when it's cold. And they wrote that about us. We wore all kinds of furs and skins and stuff and pants and different things when it was cold, but when it was hot, we wore very as little as we could. That's just a simple fact. All right. So the other thing is that there are numerous works that are going to tell you who you are. What's blurry? The video blurry. How is the video blurry? I don't know what he's talking about. Anyway, but there are many. Is it blurry
No,
here?
it's not blurry.
Oh, okay.
Disregard.
Okay. So anyway, so basically there are various works that described our color, that described how we looked. Okay. So with this being the case, this book is actually called The English Empire in America, or a View of the Dominions of the Crown of England. And I look for the old actual original books. I try to buy those. But if you were to buy a new version by on Amazon, it would be by Nathaniel Crouch. But if you look for the old version, it's going to say Robert Burton. He's the illustrator. I think he was really actually the main writer. I don't know where this Nathaniel Crouch comes from. But anyway, that's what the original thing says, Robert Burton. Okay. And oh, this is what I wanted to bring out. If you look at this excerpt from the actual old book, it says the Jamestown on the James River were neat. The houses were neat with brick houses. Okay, and they had kept courts of judicature, and also they also talk about on the bottom. They talk about cattle, cows, sheep, goats, and the horses of great number. Okay, a lot of times in these books they try to say there were no horses in America until the English or whatever brought the horses, but that's just simply not true because there are wild ponies along the shorelines of both Virginia and North Carolina. And so these wild ponies are indigenous ponies. And then the West has ponies that are wild too. So I mean, all these things they try to give credit to the Spanish, but they don't look like Spanish ponies. They're not though. They're American. Okay. So this is how it's written when you see it in the old English, in the old version, English Empire in America, same book. But I wanted to talk about the appearance because we're looking at how many, and I have several citations that talk about how we looked. The Virginians are not born as swarthy as they appear, are not born so swarthy as they appear. Their hair is generally black. See, we're not born very swarthy. That's the thing they said about Virginia Indians or a lot of American Indians in general, that we're born lighter and we get darker as we get older. You know how you look at the back of the ear, and you see what color the baby's gonna end up being. Anyway, their hair is generally black. The men have few men have beards because they pluck the hair that would grow. Their ointments and smoky houses, and a great measure caused their blackness, whereby they look like bacon. They said we look like bacon. Okay. They talked about the fact that you could have more than one wife, and actually you could have more. A woman could remarry or have another husband. It's about they really just was negotiated, but a woman had to. There was something about when she had to do it. It had to be at a certain time of year or something like that. Something about that. They said that we seldom quarrel. We seldom fight in our marriage. They seldom quarrel, and that we're very modest. The women are modest, and we seldom. Well, I don't know. We don't fight, so I don't know. We must have been happy anyway. But anyway, but they said that they wear their nails long to flee or something, to flee their deer or whatever they do, and put bows and arrows into their hands, to the hands of their children before they are 6 years old. They also, I read in other places that, yeah, we trained up our kids very, very young, very young. There are now but a few Indians in on the so New York. Okay. So and this work, this was about, I think this was in the late 17 or the mid 17. No, it wasn't late. It was the 1700s, I think this book is. So they're saying there are now but a few Indians upon the island. And these are not unserviceable, being strangely decreased since the English first settled here. There are 6 towns, once full of them. Now they are reduced to 2 villages. So they ran the Indians off, and they reduced the what used to be full of indigenous Indians are now reduced to two towns. They live by hunting. This is New York now. They live by hunting, fowling, and fishing. And their wives tilling the land and sowing the corn. They feed on fish, fowl, venison, polecats, turtles, raccoons, and the like. They build small tents where they move thrice a year, quartering them as they plant the corn near their hunting and uh, fishing quarters. Now, this is like temporary quarters, and I've seen images of that where, when they're doing fishing, hunting, or whatever, they will have temporary, little like residents, right? Their recreations are football and cards. I love seeing this. I love that this is in this book. The recreations are football and cards, at which they play away all they have, except to flap to cover their nakedness. They are lovers of strong drink, but except they have enough to be drunk, care for none. They are not they are not sufficient to make all them drunk. They choose to, so as many are as proportional to the quality. So they actually we share whatever we have. We don't over drink. We're not greedy. We only drink as much as what we have enough to share. A quart of brandy, some rum, strong waters, that kind of thing. Okay, interesting. Here's another work. Now, this one is called The History of Virginia in 4 parts. Okay. Now, when you look at that history of the first settlement, that's they're talking from the first settlement to 1706. So this one is actually put into print in 1722. And if you look at it, it says their color when they are grown up is as chestnut and tawny, but much clearer in their infancy. Their skin comes in afterwards to harden and grow blacker by greasing and sunning themselves. They generally, that means we could have lighter hair or whatever, generally have coal black hair, very black eyes, which are most commonly glinted with a sort of squint, which many Jews are observed to have. The women are generally beautiful, possessing shape and features agreeable enough, and wanting no charm but that of education and a fair complexion. So basically, they're saying they're really generally beautiful and they're nice shaped, but the only charm that they're missing is that of having an education and fair skin, light skin, white skin. Their men wear their men then hair their hair cut several phantoms, sometimes greased, sometimes painted. The great men or better sort have a lock behind for distinction, and they put bands up by the roots and muscle shells for both men and women. They do something. They do shame or by the parts of their body for cleanliness sake. They do. And the women, their hair head is very long, and either hanging at their backs or brought into a single lock at the back of their necks. Next. Here's another work that talks about our skin color. We have a lot. The general history of Virginia, New England, the Summer Isles, and it also goes, the Summer Isles is like all the islands, so it goes all over, okay? Yeah, so we've gone through 3 different books so far. We've gone through three. We've did the English Empire in America. We did the history of Virginia in 4 parts. And now we're in the general history of Virginia, New England, and the Summer Isles, which is actually a book by Governor John Smith. By John Smith. Okay? So this one, if we go to the bottom of the actual work, right? We go down here. It says down to the bottom. It says I'm going to start. Women had pendants of copper. The nobleman had 5 or 6 in each ear. His apparel, as his wives, only women wear hair long on both sides, but the men on one side. They are of color yellow, but their hair is black. We saw the children have fair chestnut colored hair. After these women, I'm gonna skip down. Let's see what it says. Women have been with us. They come down from all ports with coral and da 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 da. Whenever he came, he would signal so many fires, and he came with so many boats, and the boats were but one great tree which they burnt and formed a trough with grinds and fire until they would have it. So they made like a canoe. They carved out the boat. Okay. Okay, so now the next one, which also talks about the description, because we're still looking at all these different. So this is number, I don't know, 4 or whatever. So here is by James Adair, The History of the American Indians, Cambridge Library Collection. Okay. And so on this page, you see the observation of the color, shape, temper, and dress of the Indians of America. The Indians are a copper color or red clay color. All the Indians are strongly attached to and prejudiced in favor of their own color. They think as meanly of as the whites as we possibly can do of them. Yeah. So yeah, we had a preference for our own color. This is another one. That's another book. The History of Virginia, the First Settlement to the Present by John Burke, Volume 3. I did some lives reading this book on Facebook just yesterday. This one is 1805. I usually like a little older, but this is fine. The dress and complexion of the natives became a new source of wonder. Their skin was a copper color, and the color of their face was fierce and barbarous. But their long black hair and the admirable proportion of their bodies was proofs of a radical difference between them and the inhabitants of Africa. Proof of the radical difference between them and the inhabitants of Africa. Then it says, they appear to be a new species, equally removed from the men of Europe, Asia, and Africa. All right? For anybody who's confused about us being African, this book, The History of Virginia, its First Settlement to the Present by John Burke, Volume 3, says we are very much different, radically different between us and Africans. And then on the next page of this very same book, it says, over to the side, the face of the Indian, when arrived at maturity, is dark brown and chestnut. By a free use of the bear's grease and continual exposure to sun and weather, it becomes harder and darker. However, it's not the natural complexion. In infancy, they are much fairer. But you understand, they don't understand that our babies are born lighter. That's what our babies are born lighter. and they get darker. They don't even gotta go in the sun to get darker. They're just gonna get darker because that's the way we are. That's an indigenous Indian thing, American Indian thing. Their hair is almost invariably a coal black, straight long. Their cheeks are high. Their eyes are black and full of character and wildness and ferocity and appeasable thirst of vengeance and da 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 da. Now you remember this is 1805, so this is when they're already trying to make you not be the Indian. By this time, by 1805, they're starting to they're greedy. They want to get rid of the Negro look as being the Indian look. So this hence the straightness and the long hair. They're trying to distinguish the difference. Before, as I move forward, you'll see the next one, which is William Strachey. Now, the difference when you look at 1805 versus 1612. 1805, they're trying to put you in the matrix of being straight haired and, whatever, straight long hair. But then you go back to 1612, William Strachey's looking at us. Let's see what he says. Now, even the way they speak English is different in 1612. Captor, that's chapter, caput 5. A true description of the people, their color, constitution, disposition, their apparel. Their color. They are generally a color brown or rather tawny. Their mothers cast them in a kind of arsenic stone like reddish paste or rather red ointments of the earth. So as soon as they are born. They also said that we use it to protect them from like mosquitoes. Their hair is black, gross. And didn't say it was long, straight. They said their hair is black, gross, not straight, long and thick. The men have no beards. That's because they, like the other guy said, we pluck the guys, shaved. Some of the men shaved. Usually only the older, more, elders were allowed to have beards. Wide mouths, yet nothing so unsightly as the Moors. Now, in this work of 1612, they are clearly distinguishing the American Indian from the Moors. They are saying we're not as ugly as the Moors. That's what they're saying. The hair is black, long and thick. The men have no beards. Their noses are broad, flat, full at the end. Great big lips. There are other places they say great big lips, and I've looked through a lot of books. I've been doing a lot of looking, but there is another book that I have in my house that says great big lips as well. But I didn't track that down before this build. But there is another book that says big lips. Yet nothing so unsightly as the Moors. They are generally taller stature, straight of comely proportion. The women have handsome limbs, slender arms, pretty hands, and when they sing, they have delightful and pleasant tang in their voices. Their apparel. They are sometimes covered with the skins of wild beasts, which in the winter are dressed with hair, but in the summer without. Better sort use large mantles of diverse skins, nothing differing from the Irish fallings, kind of dressed like the Irish, kind of like kilts. Some embroidered with white beads, some with copper, other painted after their manner, but the common sort have scarce with wall to cover the nakedness, but a stick long blades of grass, leaves or whatever. But the better sort of women cover for the most part all parts. They always repeat that the women are modest. The only person talked about women being naked was John Smith, but he was a freak. He was trying to get people to come out to the new to their new colony. It's not a new country, to their new their new their new stolen colony. So he was trying to hype them up with tales of naked girls. So you can't go by that. Once again, it's a history of travel to Virginia, Britannia by William Strachey. it clearly lets you know that the Indian is not a Moor, not an African American, not a Hebrew, not a black, but is an American Indian. It clearly says nothing so unsightly as the Moors. Nothing so unsightly as the Moors. It distinguishes the Indian from the Moors. Just to be clear. We don't have to go Amora. It's written as early as 1612 that we didn't look like Moors. Now, how did they get us? How did they change us? Well, really, the first thing was like wars, right? War is the major thing. Wars, they could take us as prisoners of wars. But outside of war, they used the law to enslave us. You fornicated as a woman, you and your child be enslaved. If you were in bondage, then they made it so your child was in bondage. Things like that. And then they used Christianity. See, by using Christianity, they didn't have to say color. It's implied. Because we were spiritual, we weren't Christians. And the white slaves were the Christian slaves. But see, people don't talk about the white slaves. But there were tons of white slaves. You would have see the other thing that they did with these laws is that rape really, or you have being having a bastard child. It didn't matter if you had a bastard child from a white man, but if you had a bastard child from a Negro, then you would get lashes, and they have laws that actually said that ordered them to have whipping posts put up at various places throughout the colonies and stuff. So, but this didn't just apply to the Indian; it also applied to the white slaves that were being brought in numbers. Let's talk about the slavery and what is a slave? What is a servant? Okay, these are the actual laws of Virginia, right? Chapter 5 of the servants and slaves of Virginia. Their servants, they distinguish by the names of slaves for life and servants for a time. You could be a slave for life or a servant for a time. That applied to both people that were white Europeans, black Europeans, or whatever, or the Indians, right? You could be a slave for life, especially if you were sent over as a slave for life, or, and that did happen, criminal slaves for life or whatever. And then, or just people that were slaves that were brought over, that were captured and just purchased. White slavery happened. They took an entire, town down in Ireland. They took all of daggone almost Scotland down and brought it to North Carolina. A lot of North Carolina came from Scotland, and so I mean, this is the thing. So slaves are the Negroes, they're saying here, and their posterity following the condition of the mother, according to the maxim, parties sequitur venterum. They are called slaves in respect of their time of servitude because it's for life. If it's for life, you are a slave. Servants who serve only for a few years, according to the time of their indenture or the custom of the country. The custom of the country takes place on such to have no indentures. The law is this case, that if such servants be under 19 years of age, they must be brought into court to have their name adjudged. Y'all hear that all the time. Oh, I read in the records they had somebody come in and have their name adjudged. They had their name adjudged because they were determining their length of service. There were so many Negroes having their name adjudged because they really weren't slaves. If they were slaves for life, it didn't matter. But if they were indentured service, they had to have their name, their age adjudged. Get it? Y'all get this? It says to have their name adjudged, and from the age they are judged to be, they must serve until they reach 4 and 20. But if they are judged upwards, older than 19, then they are only to be servants for the term of 5 years. Now I did a build, and I forgot to put this on my slides, but I'm gonna show this to you. It's not my slides, but I'll show it to you. That I did a little video where I looked in my book, and there's a story of, not a story, it's actually a court record of a Negro slave who sued his white master. And in court, he said that he was only supposed to be working for him 5 years. And he won. They had to give him tobacco, a cast, and some other stuff, the cost of whatever. Yeah, he won. The slave won against the white master. And that was in 1673 or so. So we have to have the best understanding of who we are. I mean, everybody wants to act like we have to. I saw the indigenous ones shared a TikTok or somebody talking about we got to get on code or something with these indigenous people, and we got to get our reparations. We got to stop inward fighting. But the truth is the truth. The most important thing we can do is understand the truth. We don't have to be on one page. What are we going to do? Lie to be on one page? Pretend that everybody wasn't chattel slaves to be on one page? That's not what it was. So we have to know the truth of our families and ride on that truth. The reality is they've been at war with us from the beginning to now. They continuously are warring against us. We don't need chattel slavery to prove the torture and the abuse and the Holocaust that we live in this system. Due to the loss of the Indian identity and pride in that, color and status divided the Negro Indian identity. So what you have was they stratified us, right? Indians were this. If you were in servitude, whether you're indentured or you're a slave, you were considered a Negro. You were an Indian. But due to your status, you got Negro label. Is that clear in the chat? Y'all getting that? You're Indian, but say you're indentured for 5 years. You're an Indian. You're a Negro. Of course, if you became a prisoner of war and you're an Indian, then you're a forever slave. So you're a slave, but you're still a Negro slave. Okay. So let's say you're a Negro, like we talked about, and you only did your 5 years, right? You got free. A person that was an indentured servant but was freed is called a freeman. or if their parents are, they descend from a person that was a servant, a slave, a freed slave. He's not African, it says. He's one of the Americans called Africans. Called Africans, it says. Either he or his forefathers were slaves. Now he breathes a sweet liberty and looks like a man. So somebody who descended from somebody who might have been a slave, who either was manumitted or got their freedom some kind of way, is a freeman. And now they say freed men. But really, freed men kind of is related to those that were freed by the emancipation. A free man, this is before emancipation. A freeman was before emancipation. Freedmen kind of denotes after emancipation. Is that making sense? Can I get a 1? If you guys get that.
Amen.
Right. And working without an end. A freeman, according to this, is an employee or a person that's a laborer, right? This says, read at the top, because I've heard how strangely cruel and severe the service of this country, use of slaves and service in Virginia is presented in some parts of England. So evidently this guy was told that they're gone Virginia and the Americas, they do them dirty, man. They treat their slaves real bad. So I can't forbear affirming that the work of their service as slaves is no other than what every common freeman does. Neither any servant required to do in a day other than his overseer. So he's saying that it doesn't look, from his point of view, it doesn't look any worse than any freeman, any common freeman or worker or laborer, employee, neither any servant required to do in a day. So that freeman denotes a free Negro, right? A free Negro. So when they say these freemen went to the Trail of Tears with their master Indians, that don't make any sense, you see. Because if you know what a freeman is a free Negro. That means a freeman had a choice. Now, if what it was is the freeman owned land and property. And when the freeman went to, and when the freeman went on the Trail of Tears, it wasn't as a slave. It was because he had more than likely had desirable land and property on the eastern seaboard that somebody wanted, and so that's why he had to go. It wasn't because he's a slave, as they told who they told that Don Cheadle that he's a slave. Didn't he have a freeman ancestor? I don't know. They need. This is what we need to understand. What is a freeman? Is not a slave. A freeman is a free Negro, and a Negro is an Indian that used to be in servitude. An Indian Indian in servitude. They changed our name to Negro, but then what they did was they did a color thing. Before they were trying to leave the color alone, but they tried to pretend they were by slipping in the Christian shit. But then it really always was going to be about color because it's just more convenient. Oh, am I looking at here? Oh, so I want to talk about mulattoes. This is a statutes at large, being a collection of laws, the first session, the year 1619, volume 7 for William Waller Henning, 1823. These are different years, different legislature. I have volumes of this stuff. Anyway, laws of Virginia, da 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 da. an act declaring what persons shall be deemed mulattoes, being enacted by the General Assembly that every person whose grandfathers or grandmothers, anyone is, shall have been Negro, although his other progenitors, although all through us, except those descending from the Negro, shall have been white persons, they still shall have be deemed mulatto. So I don't care if you done whitened yourself up. If you have grandfathers or grandmothers, anyone, have whether of them was a Negro, I don't care if everybody's been white thus far. You're a mulatto. So every person who shall have 1/4 or more of Negro blood shall in like manner be deemed a mulatto. Who are the blacks? How are the Indians supposed to mix? Who? See, that's the confusion. The Indians were never supposed. No, well, no. Okay, I know what you're saying. I see what you're saying. No, well, see that this hasn't transpired yet in my lesson, because the reality is that the Indians not wanting to make, the Indians are the Negroes. But what happened with stuff like this, where they said if you have even a fourth, a fourth of Negro in you, then you're a mulatto. When they started to separate people up, divide us up, right, into different statuses and different color codes, then that's when the Indian became this mulatto. The Indian became a more white person, the whiter of the whitest of the white. They're less than a fourth. That became the Indian. Now, there were Indians that were dark that were grandfathered into being Indian. That's why later on, Plecker had to say, oh, no, 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 no. Everybody's colored that got brown in them. But there's layers to this racial integrity that they did. So first they had the slave codes. Then they had the Christian parentage. Now here in then they had the 1700s. They started doing this stuff by this deciding who is mulatto and who is this. Where's my good stuff? Oh, you know what? I didn't finish. Okay. So yeah. Oh no, I know what it is. Yeah. Okay. So I know he's when I do that. Fix it. I'm gonna hide that. Okay. So so now I have another thing, couple of things that are coming off the slide thing. So this is the thing. So that's what they did. It was a progression, right? So when they started to do, I got to get myself back in the groove. Sorry. All right. Tabs. Okay. So they had an act in 1833 where they had an act of descent of Indians, persons of mixed blood, being free Negroes or mulattoes. Okay. So this is how they actually were able to, the evidence of white person being adduced before court to grant any free person a mixed blood resident in any such county, not being a white person nor a free Negro or mulatto, a certificate that he is not a free Negro or mulatto, which certificate shall be certificate. So you had to have a certificate saying what you were. So they started, but that's after, you know what that is? That's after the Nat Turner Indian War. So that's 1833. Because 1831, Nat Turner was like, Oh, didn't I have a slide for that? I do have a slide for that. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get that. Oh. Oh, so I do have more slides. Okay, let me show you because I wanted to. I thought I had done more work. Let me see. All right, so let me get to the. Let me get to that. What I'm gonna do. All right, so I'm gonna show you the whole screen. We're gonna go back and look at that slide. Oh. Mm-hmm. All right, so. Okay, so let me see if that's showing. It's not showing yet. Could you click the slides? I don't see them showing. Let me see. Maybe I don't do. Oh yeah, there we go. Cool. All right, so we talked about this and we talked about that. We talked about this and we talked about that. I don't know how I ended up back here. No, I lost something. Okay. I just saw slides. Oh yeah, okay. Weird. Okay. All right, so that's what I want. Okay. So that being the case, the racial integrity laws, these racial integrity laws made 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 us stay pure. Actually, that's what I was trying to say. So I mean, the racial integrity laws, like the Christian parentage and the different laws that they use to actually separate us and by color, it made us actually stronger. Our ability to say that we're Indian is actually stronger because we weren't allowed to intermix with the whites. Now, what happened was from 1831, first of all, you had the Trail of Tears, you had the Indian Removal Act, right? The Indian Removal Act took half of a lot of our people and chased them away, right? So we got people that were chased away, but we also had our Negro chiefs that were dethroned. So that's why all the chiefs after 1830 look like they're white because they are. They're Scottish, they're Irish, they're not even indigenous Indians. So they removed all the Negro Indians, replaced them with Scottish and Irish, or highly like mulattoed like folk, right? And so, like quadroons or whatever, octoroons. So anyway, basically that's what they did in after the Nat Turner Indian War, right? And the Trail of Tears, which was, that was the whole Indian Removal Act, right? The Indian removal was actually catapulted by that Nat Turner Indian War. And where's that? I know I have. Okay, I think somehow my things are not in order. I know I have Nat Turner in my slides, but when I go to look for him, I find a brother. All right, let me kind of go to. Let me go to. All right, let me see if I can get to one because I know I have in here. Right. All right, so that's showing there. And that's shown here, but that's not shown. Okay. All right. All right. So before that, you understand that they started making laws where you couldn't own, like you couldn't whip a white slave, and then like Indians couldn't own white Christian, or they said Christians, and then it was like just outright you couldn't own a white a slave or whatever. Now you understand that there are actual lists of free white people, right? Free white people listed on slave rolls, or tax records, inventories and stuff. Free white persons, right? Why is that? Because you could have free white people work for you. You couldn't have you couldn't have a slave white person. So a lot of times when you see these lists of people and they have free white people listed in their inventory, it's you. It's you. It's your people that have white folks working for them. But we don't understand that even happened. But that's why it has to say that they're free white people, because that's what made it legal for you to have them working. And otherwise, it doesn't even make sense why they list them as free white people. Who really cares? It's important because of the Indians. The Indians were owning or having white folks work for them. Indians, Negro. Okay, now let me make this clear. By the time it's like the 1800s, they don't even want to call you Indian. Very few people are able to be called Indian by the 1800s, right? Now they turned the Indians into, if you look brown, they don't want to call you Indian anymore. But you are Indian. You're free. They don't control you. You're not a slave. So what do they call you? They call you free people of color. They call you colored. They call you mulatto. They call you Negro. But they don't call you Indian. You may recognize yourself an Indian, or you're already, or like we do today, we just accept whatever they're calling us. So next thing you know, we're going by colored. We're going by Negro. We're going by, mulatto.
Lisa, can I make a point real quick?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This was their first time disconnecting you from the land, like really pulling you away from it, acting like you're not a part of it. This is when this is going down.
Yeah. This division, by making you into something else, then you first of all, they took you, the Christianity took you away from the love of your own spirituality. And then in addition, they created the first color division. It created that whole division where you were in competition with your own self. Like you couldn't be free because of your color. You couldn't do certain things because of your color. And that also created competition, resentment, and people trying to be something that they're not. But they wanted the people the immigrants that they brought in to have land. And the ones that came in and did their indentureship, they wanted to be able to take our land. So they wanted to put us in a situation where they could take our land and our rights from us. And all this happened with the whole war against us, the Nat Turner War, the Trail of Tears War, the daggone Seminole War, 1812 War. And then before that, this Revolutionary War was about all these international bandits. These international bandits from all these different nations came together to take over our country. They kicked out the British because the British was trying to do things that were actually kind of cool. Like if you looked at some of it, they had a lot of control. There were certain things they couldn't do to us. We were going to court against our slave masters. There were certain things, and that was in place from us. from us as indigenous people. We have our own laws, okay? That was our laws. But the taxes were bothersome. So that's why we were like, well, maybe we get rid of the British. We won't have these taxes and tariffs and all this crap. They're stupid with that stuff. And so we were like, torn as to who was the bad guy. But the bad guy was duped to be daggone England. But we were actually duped because there were bad guys. It's a whole united international corporation of bandits that took over America. See, Nat is an Indian name. It's actually a Nottoway surname. Turner is a Nottoway surname. So he was an Indian, no doubt. This is an Indian until you call him by another name. But an Indian is an Indian no matter what you call him. An Indian is an Indian no matter what you call him. So they called him a slave. They called him a Negro. But he still really was an Indian. How many different European countries? Well, we know that the Germans helped build Powhatan a house. We know the Swedes were over there. We know the daggone Dutch. We know that we had Italians. We know we had Portuguese still coming through. We know we had the Irish, the Irish, the Scottish, the English. Who else? Jeez, I mean, that's a lot, right? I mean, it's an international corporation. Jews, from where, the Jews are like gypsies. The Jews that, are the, Sephoric, they're like gypsies, right? They don't have, their home, they wandered. So though they were coming in disguised as Dutch. It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And it's happening, and it continues. That's right, and it continues today. Yes, yep, Keith. Okay. So due to the loss of our Indian identity and our pride and our color status was divided, the Indian Negro identity got divided. And that's why it was like Indians became something that they even started writing. Remember I showed you that work where in 1800 whatever 5, they started changing how they described the Indian because they wanted to separate the Indian into a whole different entity. But also remember, after the daggone revolution, they did the Louisiana Purchase, and they met the Plains Indians, which was the greatest daggone excuse for disengaging from the Negro Indian as being from this continent. All of a sudden, they had an excuse. They could call us Africans because they saw that we had these Asiatic-looking Plains Indians out there. So they deemed them the real Indians, and then the ones that they had been dealing with for 200 years, they started saying that we were from Africa. It was at that point, you can almost see it exactly. Louisiana Purchase, 1806. Sacagawea shows them those other Plains Indians. They're like, whoa, cool. These guys look different. Oh man, we can go ahead and tell, and all these other Indians over here, we can say what an Indian looks like based upon what these guys out here look like, and all these other ones that we've been having to still deal with that look like Negroid. We can call them African. We can call them African. But the reality is, okay, so with this being the case, we understand that they did this. They changed. They went through the process of this identity theft, this racial identity theft. And so when they did that, they were able to kill us off. It was genocide. It was land theft. And they turned us into something that we're not. So riding into the Civil War, you had a whole bunch of so-called Negroes, colored folk, not being called Indian, free people of color, free blacks who own land all over the South. So when you do your genealogy, you're looking for Indians. Well, they stopped us from being called Indian a while ago, as soon as they possibly could, as a matter of fact. If you were brown, they were not trying to call you Indian after 1700. So the people that were in the South that owned land, these free people of color, these free colored people, they had to give them the story. So there you have the Clotilda. All these different things are being done to let them know that you're not from here, you land-owning colored people. You're not from here. And they terrorized people. They burnt people out of things. There was so many different exoduses that happened throughout our time, and dealing with these immigrants, right? They have forced us to leave our homeland so many different times in history, not just in the 1900s, but in several times in the 17, 1800s, several times over. We have been pushed around, okay, off of our property. Our businesses destroyed, our towns destroyed. This has happened repeatedly throughout history. The Civil War was to get that land from those wealthy Southern landowners that was us. That's why you'll see scattered and snuck here and there. Oh, he was the wealthiest landowner. Ellison was the wealthiest landowner in South Carolina, a Negro. But they act like they say he was the only one. They lie and say he was the only one. Him and his two sons or three sons were the only Negroes that were free or whatever in the county or something. They lie. They lie. This was prevalent. There were so many Negroes that owned so much, and that's why they had to go ahead and do that major war against us. It gave the North and the South the opportunity to come together and destroy what we had. Destroy our money, take our gold, take our silver, take our copper, take everything. And then they rewrote it and said, it's war. But see, this is the thing. Just like now, the people at the time probably didn't clearly understand what was being done to them. They didn't understand. It's like propaganda. Propaganda has been used by the Europeans forever. They got Queen Elizabeth to kill her cousin, Mary. They told her she wanted her throne, and she locked her up in a tower and murdered her without ever even talking to the cousin. That's how they win. They make up lies and they get things popping based off of a lie. So the Civil War, all that stuff about freeing the slaves, they talked that yin yang, and there were wealthy black people. There were wealthy indigenous people who helped with that whole effort, so-called. But there were white slaves, and they don't teach about that. And even to this day, Boule Negro people will sit up there and say that their ancestor fled from, Georgia. There's a whole documentary about the ancestor fled from Georgia, and the ancestor was clearly white. But they're not even giving any kind of credibility to the fact that the woman was white and fleeing from Georgia with her Negro husband. See, the reality is being lied, and everybody's conspiring with the lie. A lot of the people that we think are our kinfolk ain't kinfolk. A lot of them are Black Europeans, and they're siding with their family. So with that, there has been a lot to change your identity. So when we look in the records, that's why when you see free colored, or you see colored, or you see black, or you see Negro, you got to understand they took that away, that Indian status away from you a long time ago. And there were a few people that were able to hold on to it. But the majority of us didn't feel like it was worth it. You can look in the records, like in my family in 1850, you can see when my grandfather, my great grandfather was there with his brothers, and he was like 10 years younger than them, and they went to Florida to keep their Indian status with the Seminoles. But he stayed in Virginia and he became a Negro. He went from colored to Negro. And then Plecker wanted to make sure that everybody was called colored. Everybody was called colored or Negro if you had any melanin. That didn't happen until 1924, but it had been happening to us since the 1600s. They've been doing it. But then you got to understand that the people that are the Indians now, like let's say the Nottaways. The Nottaways were around when Nat Turner was doing his thing. They don't claim him, even though he clearly is a Nottaway. Or he could be related to us too, but Turner is like definitely Nottaway. It's not Ackerman. But anyway, Nat was a Nottaway. The Nottaways that were allowed to continue to be Nottaway. Now, there was a break. A lot of people were just bare bones Indians. Like, were they still in their reservation? Some of them maintained their reservation land and property. A lot of people didn't. Some people actually reclaimed their identity as being Indian when all that Plecker stuff started, when you either had to poop or get off the pot. So at that point, a lot of light-skinned people who had the complexion and the hair, light hair and the light skin and the hair to identify, to say that they're Indian, they got together with their similar-looking cousins and actually organized as Indian, like the Chickahominy and the Mattapony. Meanwhile, right in the same county, right in the same town, were their darker complected cousins who had not intermixed with whites. But they didn't include them because they didn't want anything to mess up their being able to be recognized as Indian. So that's why when you deal with these already organized nations that are on the roll, okay, let's go with the Dawes Rolls. The Dawes Rolls are comprised of white. Most of those are white Scottish folks. The Dawes Rolls are mostly comprised with white Scottish folks. People could pay $5 to be on the Dawes Rolls. So the Negroes that have people on the Dawes Rolls, those people that they're saying I'm on the Dawes Rolls are really European. Odds are they're European. If you got somebody who's on the Dawes Rolls, they're more than likely European. Because that's what it was devised for, to keep account of the people that they allowed through the daggone government. The government condoned, the government approved Indian are on those rolls. So either they're very, very mixed, or they're not even Indian at all. Y'all get that? So the ones that actually got themselves together to be Indian after the Plecker thing, like in the early 1900s, a lot of them were like, yeah, we're gonna, because again, it was a very formal line being drawn in the sand. You either a nigger or or colored, or you was or then there's only a few people gonna be Indians. That's it. No more you calling yourself Indian. So when they drew that line in the sand in the early 1900s, like I said, a few these tribes these tribes that actually survived that, it was because they played the color game. They played the color game. Okay? They played colorism. And that's why they're able to be the organized people that they are today. Now, these people, prior to them being required to declare themselves either colored or not, were wearing zoot suits and doing their thing. They were not going around doing powwows and crap on a regular basis. They weren't doing it like that. I promise you. Because they organized themselves, they had to, the government was like, so show me you're Indian. Prove it. Do Indian shit. Like that. Like they would do. You can imagine. So these nations had to come up with costumes, regalia, dances, powwow shit, do stuff. They had to put on a show for the government. You know, they had to put on a show. And that's what they did. That's what they did. And so a lot of what they learned, they took from the Plains Indians, because those were those were the government approved Indians. So they started dancing like them. They started dressing like them. So it's really hard for us to decipher what is real and what is not, because so much was taken from Indians that really aren't a part of our original culture. If that makes sense to folks. So going forward, they still calling us Negro, because Flecker made that clear. We couldn't be no Indians, only a few. And so they made sure the nations that could call themselves Indians, that they kept marrying white. So now when you ride around, you go to the Mattapony reservation, you're gonna see blonde hair and blue eyes, because they really stayed away from anything that's not white. And that's why you see all these white people as Indians, because it was legislated, because people would get killed. You could lose your land. You could use you could not lose your land. You could lose your life trying to be Indian. You could lose everything if you tried to daggone cross over. You're gonna be kicked out the daggone nation. You marry yourself a sister. See what happens. You'll be off the reservation. You'll be excommunicated from your family. So that kind of thing was happening. So the Negro was educated that we're African, because then they realized, well, we got all these, they tried to kill us. They've done everything. They did the Spanish flu. They've done the wars, war after war, trying to kill all the Negroes, send them off to war, get them shot up. They put heroin in our neighborhoods. They put cocaine in our neighborhoods. They put diseases, syphilis. They put daggone HIV. They've done everything. Crack cocaine, now fentanyl, Percocet. You got Lil Wayne walking around with a Percocet necklace on. They're advertising, die, 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 Negro. But we're still around. We have to make sure that they know that they're not from this land. So that's why it became imperative that Roots and African American became our name. And Roots and Africa was the name of the game. And then they came up with DNA, so we can be further convinced that we got scientific proof that we're from Africa. It wasn't for them. They don't care where they're from. They ain't trying to go back. They're trying to take what's yours. They ain't trying to go back. Most of them ain't got nothing to go back to because they didn't have nothing when they was there. They got beautiful stuff there. I don't understand it, but they don't want to go back because they got more by taking from you. And you are told that you're from some place that you don't come from. Therefore, you are a immigrant, foreigner. But really, you're a person without a home because you don't belong there, and they're telling you you don't belong here. And that's why it's so important that you go back and reach back into your real people and into your real identity, your real genealogy, not no fake made up stuff, because we got to battle, and the battle's got to be right. And we got to be on our game. We got to be on our game. We got to know. We got to know who we are, and we got to fight for what is ours. And we got to protect as many people as we can in the process. And if you organize your people that you really are, then that's the more you can do as far as being able to protect yourself, being able to have right. See, what people don't understand, all these stars that are going to Africa and getting proclaimed the Queen of Ghana or whatever, or the Queen of this or the Princess of that, if they know that they're indigenous, they're evil. They're evil if they don't know. They're evil if they know. If they know, they're evil. But they need to know that they are the Indians, because if they knew they were the Indians, they know there's no better way for you to be free from the system. Let me make this clear. An Indian is the only person that can be free on this land, because this land, you are the land. You as an Indian, you are not under their jurisdiction as an Indian. You as an Indian, you are free. You as an Indian can self-govern. You as an Indian have a right to all the benefits and things that they owe you. They owe you. Everyone who comes here owes you, because they're benefiting off of you and what's yours as an Indian. But they don't. But you can't claim that as an immigrant that they brought in here. You can't claim that. You can say you've been here a long time and you helped build things, but that don't mean nothing. If you're a foreigner, you're a foreigner. But a debt is owed to you if you are the American Indian. A debt is owed to you. You are this land. You have to understand, certain people have certain amount of freedoms here. Like, for instance, we should all be aspiring to be the Indian that our ancestors were, to regain, and reobtain that status. That is the status we all should be aspiring to, by repatriating our people, by doing our research, gathering up our folks, getting our nations, our tribal people together, our bands and clans together, and repatriating the people that we truly are. Joining a nation, joining a tribe, getting enrolled in these tribes, you're just enrolling in the government-sanctioned organization. If you want to be in a role of some of these Indian nations, they are government sanctioned organizations controlled by the government, the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. You are not free. They are not free. That's why they didn't even want to go and love who they wanted to love. Because They wanted to keep on being these Indians. So they kept on marrying white and bright so they could keep their status as being Indians. So they aren't free. There a lot of they get money given to them, but then the government can snatch it away, and they do. I've seen it with my own eyes. So if you want to, so if you're lamenting because you tried to enroll and nobody won't let you enroll, stop belly aching and do something, because you don't have to enroll with them. Your grandma, and then the people that sit there and say they're Cherokee. Cherokee is a big umbrella term. Stop it. You sound ridiculous. It is a government. They weren't. I don't see nothing written about no Cherokee before 1800s. I don't see nothing about that. That's a made up thing. You need to work on finding out who your people were in the counties your ancestors lived, and their name wasn't just Cherokee or Creek or Catawba or Muskogee. They had specific names, like the indigenous one says, that went with the rivers and the mountains and the streams and whatever their environment was. Their names went with that, with their language. And you need to repatriate them. You need to find somebody who's willing to do it for you. But you need to organize yourselves into the real people with the real records. The real records that link to you. There's nothing more powerful than that. Because when they check you, you're going to be like, check me. Because all you're going to find is what is true. I am for real. I'm not making up nothing. I'm not part of no made up name. My people are where I say they are. They are the people that are connected to me. And everybody in this nation can say the same thing. We are fact checkable. That's what you want to be. You want to be fact checkable. You don't want to be one of these social groups that are pretending to be nations. Because when you go to fight, it's all going to crumble. You can't fight when you're standing on silt, sand, foam. You're not standing on brick. You're not standing on solid ground. You're not standing on a damn sperm foundation. You need to be standing on your ancestors. That's the only way to fight this. That's it.
Get an education like that in school. So simple. She just gave you the blueprint of what happened. And everybody who's on this chat knows that's exactly what went down. They got to change you, make you into what they want to be, not who you are. So keep that in mind going forward. They're here to replace you. And if you keep saying you're all these foreign identities, you're helping the process along. You're helping them out. So we're available for classes. Hit us up at aaana.com. Check us out in the Facebook chat. Come to Facebook, get in the group. Very interesting conversations, very interesting posts that the young people are putting out. I think you'll get a kick out of that. So I want to thank Lisa for being here with us tonight. She be giving it up, don't she, y'all? These are the kind of teachers we should be having. You're talking about what we going to do for school. Do an internet school, all 50 states. There's all kind of things we can do. But we need the indigenous people to help because they're the only ones who can help. They're the only ones who know what's needed. So check us out. We'll see you next time. Peace.